Right, pay close attention. I know that you know there are malign influences at work within the government. But did you know there were also really stupid influences at work within the government? Today we're going to talk about a sneaky new tax. It looks so boring and so insignificant that the media haven't even picked up on it. Or maybe they have and they just don't want to talk to you about it. It's another tax dressed up as saving the planet, but it doesn't. It doesn't save anything. All it will do is further depress an already nearly bankrupt economy, and it's called the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, right? I told you it sounded boring. They call it CBAM for short. It's a technical tax and it's being introduced in January 2027. And what it will do is dramatically raise the cost of living, hammer British industries even more, and shrink food security, all without a single vote in Parliament. I know, you're getting used to that now, right? So this CBAM tax wasn't actually born in the UK, it was invented in Brussels, and the EU launched it in 2021, saying it was to save the planet. But actually, it's a protectionist tax. It's a move that puts import tax on raw materials so that EU industry looks cheaper. Look, I completely get it. If I lived in the EU, I'd probably do it too, because it protects their industries from really cheap imports, which is brilliant for them because they still have an industry, right? Now, it is a tariff. It's like a tariff, right? But they don't call it that. They call it a carbon tax. This protectionist measure for the EU might work in some of their areas because it will mean that those European industries won't face as much competition from cheaper imports from places like China. And of course we did. The UK government just copied it. They just copied it over. In 2023, the Treasury announced we'd have our own CBAM version. Now, the draft legislation has already been written, but Parliament will never vote on it, and they never will. No MP had a chance to represent their constituency and put their views forward because it's being introduced by a statutory instrument, a little technical thing there that they do when they don't really want you to talk about it. And sometimes it matters a great deal and sometimes it doesn't matter. Just sign it. No one has to see it. Oh, we changed the rules. It's kind of legislation slipped in through the back door. CBAM will put a carbon charge on imports of raw materials. And these could be as high as 24%. That is a massive increase, and it starts with the backbone of our manufacturing industry: steel, aluminium, cement, fertiliser and hydrogen. Now, finished goods like cars and laptops and hairdryers, they're not included yet, but Brussels are already drafting plans to extend it into manufactured goods. But let's just park that. Let's just talk about raw materials, because that is the part of Britain where our industry no longer supplies our requirement. Okay? It sounds good in theory to protect your industry until you don't have one. So steel, we've got 2 blast furnaces left. Tata's moving on to electric arc furnaces. We don't know when, they're a bit behind, but they are getting billions and billions in subsidies from taxpayers. Brilliant. Anyway, UK steel output is tiny compared to places like Germany. We import about 60% of our steel, about £7 billion worth a year. And CBAM will slap another £1.5 billion of tax on top on an industry that isn't profitable. Aluminium. Well, we don't do primary smelting anymore. It's bad for the planet. It's dead. So imports supply almost everything we need, about £5 billion worth. a year. And CBAM will add an extra £1 billion in tax. Great. Oh, brilliant. I'm sure those companies will love it. And fertiliser. So our last ammonia plant shut in 2022, and we now rely almost entirely on imports. Nearly £2 billion worth a year. And CBAM will add an extra £500 million in tax for our own farmers. Let's talk about that fertiliser thing again, because we are at crisis point in our farming industry, and fertiliser is one of the most carbon intensive products in the world, which means that CBAM really will hit it very hard. It is likely to receive the highest level of taxation, and farmers are already drowning in costs, aren't they? They've got red diesel tax now, inheritance tax, subsidy reforms, land use restrictions. Adding nearly £500 million in extra costs to farmers will make more of them give up. And they'll sell or lease their land, not to other farmers, they can't afford that tax either, but to solar developers or rewilding schemes. More and more land will stop producing food and get locked into the green finance bubble. And you can't eat solar panels. Our food self-sufficiency is already down at what, 60%? CBAM will push it even lower, making us even more dependent on bloody imports. It isn't a climate policy the government have introduced. It's just helping to destroy food security. And what's really ironic about this whole thing is that the UK government is itself the biggest buyer of steel, cement and aluminium, because they're the ones building the roads, the hospitals, the railways, the schools and the housing, and they all need these materials. So when they put this carbon tax on imports of up to 24%, the government is effectively taxing itself, for goodness sake. Projects just get more expensive, borrowing goes up, and taxpayers foot the bill twice, once as consumers and again as taxpayers. And remember, we're already paying £111 billion a year just in interest on our debt. Well, we just increased it by adding carbon tax to save the planet. What a load of utter bollocks. Now, there must be an upside, right? So if we're going to put these green taxes on imports that won't help our own companies, what are we going to do with it? We're going to use it to boost British businesses, aren't we? Or help some of those struggling industries? No. Nope. It's going to go straight into the Treasury's general pot. They've already told us. The same one that pays MPs' salaries and debt interest. It's not going into farming, not clean steel, not new technology. It's just another tax. And it is entirely, completely self-defeating. I literally could have done this with 5 minutes, the calculator on my phone, and I could have told civil servants what would happen if they did that. The Treasury thinks it will raise £3 to £4 billion in extra taxation a year because they're stupid. Because all this extra tax will do is lower business profits. So they won't pay as much corporation tax, right? And families, of course, will cut their spending because things are more expensive. So VAT receipts will fall. And before you know it, that windfall of 3 or 4 billion has totally evaporated. At best, it will make no difference to overall taxation, but it will make a huge difference to businesses and families up and down the country. It's an absolute losing policy. And EU imports are already pricier anyway. So whether we buy it from China or we buy it from Germany without the tax, all our costs will go up from January 2027. And here's where it gets really interesting, because Trump did a new trade deal with the UK, scrapping tariffs on things like US steel and aluminium. CBAM isn't a tariff, it's a carbon tax. So in 2027, US goods will be hit when they land in Britain and whacked with these CBAM charges. US-made steel and aluminium exports form part of the $57 billion we import from America each year. Trump's already calling CBAM in the EU a sneak tariff. So imagine how pissed off he's going to be when he finds out that British tax offices are going to do exactly the same thing. All he's going to do is add taxes onto UK exporting companies, meaning guess what? Their profits come down too, so they'll pay less tax into the Treasury. CBAM, the new carbon import tax, which no one's talking to you about and the press think you're too stupid to understand, isn't levelling the playing field. It is going to drive up the cost of living, drive farmers off the land, and push up the bill for every home, hospital and road we build. And the government thinks they are so damn clever. But honestly, they are so very, very, very stupid. Tell me what you think. Have you heard about CBAM? I might do regulations next week because the new regulations are a shocker. Oh, they're useless. Anyway, that's it on the sneaky tax. Let me know what you think. Leave me a comment, like, subscribe. Let's see you again. I'll be in a really big rage next time. I can feel it.